Trash Talking.
Hi, I'm Doug Johnson, and I'm White Trash Talking. Today I want to look at the growing trend of fascism in the U.S. To put the situation in context, it's important to remember that the U.S. is essentially a settler colonial state founded on the genocide of prior native inhabitants and then built up largely through slave labor and indentured servitude. Historically, while people of the Global South endured the ravages of neocolonialism, Americans at home, especially white Americans, enjoyed freedoms and protections granted by constitutional democracy. So it's fair to say that fascist tendencies were sort of baked into the DNA of America from the beginning. The separation between U.S. fascism abroad and constitutional democracy at home appears to be breaking down now, as fascism is now coming home to roost. As an example, here's an excerpt of a speech by Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff at the memorial service for Charlie Kirk.
Our lineage and our legacy hails back to Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry. The light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. And to those trying to incite violence against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity. We built the world that we inhabit now, generation by generation. And we will defend this world. We will defend goodness. We will defend light. We will defend virtue. We are on the side of goodness. We are on the side of God.
This is scary. The you in his speech vaguely identifies enemies at home living in our midst, apparently threatening us. The we in We Built the World refers to America, of course, but strongly implies white America. I can't imagine him crediting Black, Hispanic, or Asian Americans for putting the arc in architecture. The message I took away was, we are the master race and the rulers of the world. The tone is very Nazi-like, and some people online have pointed to similarities in Miller's words to a speech given by Goebbels in 1932. It would be worth exploring this topic more deeply. Here is Chris Hedges, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, author, and political activist, to discuss fascist movements in general, as well as to explain the growing trend in the U.S.
Fascism never looks the same. Paxton, in his book, Anatomy of Fascism, he taught at Columbia, was a scholar in Weimar, makes precisely this point. And at the end of the book, he said that when fascism comes to America, it won't be with swastikas and jackboots. It will be with the Christian cross and mass recitations of the Pledge of Allegiance. You really got a glimpse of that in the rally in Arizona or rally, whatever you want to call it, the memorial service for Kirk. And Mussolini's fascism was very different from German fascism. The Germans went back and elevated this Teutonic myth. Mussolini looked back to ancient Rome. Anti-Semitism was never a strong element within Italian fascism. But there are characteristics, of course, of all fascist movements, but they clothe themselves differently. Our fascism comes in the guise of a Christian fascism. And as Paxton points out, the fascist movements always elevate very reassuring nationalist symbols to essentially give legitimacy to their movement. And the old Roman symbols were resurrected by Mussolini, for instance, in his fascist project. So fascism mutates according to the culture that it's in. It is, of course, about hypermasculinity. It is about creating the ethno-nationalist state at the exclusion of everyone else. And then, of course, constant mobilization against enemies, either internal or external. And as soon as you finish with one enemy, you have to turn on another. These movements are really grounded in magical thinking. They're not grounded in rational thought. They're not even grounded in reality. They're grounded in recreating a mythical past, the capture of a recovery of a lost glory and return of wealth and prosperity. All of it's mythical. So that's part of the problem with dealing with totalitarian movements, is that they're not grounded in verifiable fact. Because of that, you can't argue with them. I learned this in the Christian right. You're not going to argue with creationists who believe that dinosaurs were in the Garden of Eden, which is in the Creationist Museum, which I visited. In fact, they have a diorama of Adam and Eve with a fake waterfall and a T-Rex with a saddle on it.
Oh my God.
And the guide is telling us, well, why? I'm sure you wonder why T-Rex had such big teeth. It's so T-Rex used to open the coconuts for Adam and Eve. I mean, you've really checked out of the rational universe at that point. But that's the attraction of all totalitarian movements, which are built on despair. These megachurch pastors prey on this despair in the same way that Trump preys on the despair, as he did with his sham university and everything else, and his casino in Atlantic City. Trump is the symptom. He's not the disease. He's the product of a deeply decayed and troubled society, which a bankrupt liberalism and the Democratic Party contributed to. The agenda that they promote does not have majoritarian support. So they take it step by step by step. It's always a process. That was true in the 1920s in the Soviet Union. It took Stalin well over a decade to consolidate power. They know what they want. They know, and I know because I spent 2 years with the Christian right and have read all of their stuff, Rusas Rushduni and everything else. They have a very clear vision of the world they want. And it's a world where, people like you and me really have no place. But it doesn't come overnight. The Kirk assassination gives them essentially an excuse to turbocharge where they are going. They will play off of events. And as the system seizes up, you'll see more and more political assassinations. And then the state will always seize on those moments to push through their agenda. But it takes time.
A core feature of fascism is the extreme us versus them dichotomy, in which the other is dehumanized and then destroyed. Chris Hedges describes this mindset, which he argues is inherent in all of us.
The world is black and white. You saw, I think both Vance and Miller, if I remember correctly, used the word evil to describe the rest of us. Evil, the thing about these movements is that evil is always embodied in the other. And as a former seminarian and having been in war zones around the world, I understand that the line between the victim and the victimizer, as Primo Levi pointed out, is razor thin, and that the primary battle is evil, is our own capacity for evil. They don't look at it that way. They look at themselves as righteous and pure, and evil is embodied physically in other human beings. And in order to eradicate evil, those people have to be eradicated. That is how they view the world. That's how the Christian right views the world. That's how all fascist movements view the world. And that's very dangerous, because when you lack that capacity for introspection, when you can't see your own darkness, and you believe that physically eradicating others is a way to purify the society, then you actually perpetuate your own evil and your own capacity for atrocity. And as they become more frustrated because their goal is unachievable, ultimately, they become more violent.
This website by the IDEA, the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, puts out global state of democracy reports about a number of countries, including the U.S. They have classified the U.S. as a backsliding democracy starting in 2021. They report that democratic deterioration began before 2019, although I would put the start date well before that, which is caused by weakened checks on the executive, erosion of civil liberties, and election legitimacy challenges. Other core warning signs include the polarization and election distrust, the decline in freedom of association and assembly, as well as runaway polarization. This is the good versus evil mindset that Hedges just addressed. Chris Hedges elaborates further on the recent three-pronged maneuvering by the Trump administration to consolidate power.
Began with the spurious claims that large research universities like Harvard or Columbia were bastions of anti-Semitism, and the universities acquiesced with this. So that was used that in the name of anti-Semitism, you saw free speech shut down. Then you saw the demonization of undocumented workers, of migrants, that they're criminals and the prisons are being emptied. And of course, the truth is most of these people are working 14 hours a day, making maybe $14,000 or $15,000 a year. And that saw the massive infusion of money into ICE, which will include building detention centers all across the American landscape. And if anyone thinks that those are exclusively for undocumented workers or migrants, they are very naive. And then we saw this elevation of martyrdom of Kirk, which licenses the government to go after the radical left. The radical left is a fairly marginal force in American politics, relatively insignificant, frankly, but that will be used to go after liberals, George Soros, the Open Society, the Democratic Party, legacy media outlets, and you can charge them with terrorism. That's what this process is about in that kind of three-pronged assault that I outlined. Trump is weaponizing everything within the federal government to go after not just people who challenge his administration, but insult him personally. And it's a mafia. I mean, you see it with this tweet with Bondi to go get his detractors. Carl Polanyi wrote a great book called The Great Transformation. He was an economist, brilliant economist. And he talked about once you create a mafia economy, which is, of course, what we created, then you create a mafia government. And that's exactly what happened. But these people function like the mob. I mean, Trump talks like he's from the mob, even to the UN. Trump is getting what it wants. Remember, Ellison, Trump's supporter, is about to take over CBS and appoint Barry Weiss, an arch Zionist, allegedly is the head of CBS News, and he may buy CNN. So you have Trump supporters using their significant wealth to essentially buy up the media landscape. And let's be clear when we talk about Trump. Trump is very limited intellectually, of course, but the people around him, the Project 2025, this time around, they were prepared, they have a vision, they know what they want to do, and that is essentially destroy our democratic system. And the way they will do it is by neutering any institution to essentially prevent any blowback or any threat to their consolidation of power, because they don't have majoritarian support. None of these movements ever have majoritarian support. I think Trump is unfortunately replaceable because I don't think Trump is the brains behind all of this. He's kind of shrewd in a sense of knowing how to play the media, but he's a carnival barker. He's kind of P.T. Barnum-like. I think it's clear when they hand him these executive orders and his Sharpie, he probably has very little idea of what he's actually signing. So unfortunately, I think this movement's bigger than Trump.
Trump's consolidation of power is frightening. Soon, our constitutional freedom of speech, the freedom to express dissenting views, let alone to protest, will be gone. Our ability to stay informed will also vanish once Trump shuts down legacy media and goes after alternative media. Democratic institutions such as the legislature, judiciary, the executive, human rights groups, and civilian-controlled law enforcement, which have been decaying for some time, may collapse entirely. Is it already too late? I don't know. God help us if it is. That's all I have. Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment, and I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.